But then something extraordinary was out there. I caught this. I'm around 24/7. Wall Street Journal. Indiana Governor Mitch Daniels, who's considering a run. And by the way, George Will's guy and Rove's guy and some of these others, who's considering a run for the 2012 Republican presidential nomination, veered from his party's orthodoxy on end-of-life care Friday, suggesting the nation cannot afford to provide every treatment and technology available for every single dying patient. Just listen. Quote, "We all want to live forever. We want everything done to help us," he told healthcare reporters during a discussion of Medicare and its financial pressures. "And we cannot, no one can, do absolutely everything that modern technology makes possible for absolutely everyone till absolutely the very last day, the very last resort," unquote. So what are we going to do, Mitch? You have some new rules you want to set down? When do we cut off life? You know what bothers me about this? There is something immoral about it. No, follow me on this. We spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars in this country having nothing to do with health care. Every idiot in Congress who has an idea, they create a program, which you can never get rid of. They create a bureaucracy, which you can never cut. They have bridges with their names on them. They have monuments of all kinds to themselves. They're subsidizing this group or that industry. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. We spend about 17% of our gross domestic product on health care. Let's pretend it's 20%. 20 cents out of every dollar. Is there something else we should be spending it on? What, we don't have enough community block grants? Trial lawyers aren't raking in enough money? What is it exactly that's a bigger priority to each of us than our health? 17% too high? What, should be 14%? To argue that Medicare is unsustainable is a correct argument. And there need to be serious reform proposals to address it. And there are many, and I've brought up a number of them. I didn't invent them. I tapped such geniuses as Milton Friedman. But there are reform proposals. But that is not to say that we start by talking about, look, it's time to go, it's time to go. Well, in each case, how do we know? And who makes that decision? The family, the individual. That's who makes the decision. Never the government. Never, ever the government. And yet this is what the man says. We'll link to this so you can read the whole interview. Apparently at some point somebody tapped him on the shoulder and said, we better get out of here. So maybe the Daniels family will tell us at what point they themselves think the plug should be pulled. But that's up to them, and that's their business. Well, Mark, if we're paying for it, well, we should be paying for less of it. That's the point. We don't have the tail wagging the dog. If there's a federal program like Medicare or Medicaid, then the government gets to make these decisions. These programs need to be reduced for future generations. For those who are on it, for those who are almost on it, we made a pledge, and that pledge must be upheld. But for future generations, we need to wean people off this idea because it's not sustainable. But that's not to say, you know what, you're too expensive now. And yet, ladies and gentlemen, did we not say, all of us, you, me, this was the logical endpoint of government-run health care? You see, once the government can tell you what kind of health care you can have, then the government tells you how well you're going to live, and ultimately, near the end, how long you're going to live. We've all been dancing around the edges on that, but that's the truth. All right, let's move on. Let us get to something that also affects each and every one of you. I don't care if you're a truck driver, a cab driver. I don't care if you're listening at your dinner table right now, if you're stuck in traffic on the West Coast. This affects all of us. First of all, there was a typically mindless piece, op-ed in the Wall Street Journal by Levin. Big McCain guy, big rhino, used to be a big leftist, and he admonishes talk show hosts, Rush, others, who dared to say that Obama really does want to drag this country down. How outrageous for anybody to say that. And yet, I look at his budget today, and I have to conclude, Obama really wants to drag this country down. What else can you conclude? The man has run up the deficit and the debt in record time. He has access to all the economic indicators. It's provided to him every day. He sees what's going on in the country. Even the red Chinese are begging him to cut it out. Red Chinese are more conservative than he is when it comes to fiscal matters. Think about that. But he won't stop. He ignores a federal judge's order and continues to implement Obamacare. What's that? He refuses to secure the border like his predecessor. What's that? All good intentions we're supposed to believe. I would recommend to Medved that he read a little bit more thoroughly about the intellectuals and the masterminds and their plans and their designs. You might want to start with Plato's Republic, work your way to Thomas More's Utopia, then maybe Hobbes's Leviathan, then maybe the Marx Engels Communist Manifesto. Work your way all the way up, Medved. All the way up to the Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky. Oh, this is just a man who's a liberal, right? Wrong. Let me tell you about this budget, ladies and gentlemen. Over at National Review Online, the corner, Andrew Stiles lays it out. This budget has $3.73 trillion in spending. That is 25% of the gross domestic product. First time since World War II. Are we in a world war right now of that sort? No. And it's not the defense budget that's pushing it. There was a time in World War II when our defense budget was well over 50% of the budget. Well, the defense budget is well under 25% of the budget. $46 trillion total spending under the Obama budget. These are his figures over the next decade. $8.7 trillion in total new spending over the same period. By the way, 25% of the GDP means 1/4 of all goods and services produced in this country are the government's. Produced for the government, not by the government. To feed the government. $26.3 trillion total new debt, including entitlement obligations, in the next 9 years. Who's going to pay for this? $7.2 trillion total deficit predicted by the end of the decade. And this has all these phony assumptions that the economy will really start growing starting next year in big numbers. $1.1 trillion, that's how much the White House estimates the proposal will cut the deficit over the next 10 years. But $4 trillion is how much the President's Deficit Commission recommended reducing the deficit over the next 10 years. And over the next 10 years, how do we know what's going to happen over the next 10 years? $1.6 trillion, the projected annual deficit for 2011. That is 11% of the gross domestic product. So listen to this. 10 cents out of every dollar that you, the American people, produce in the private sector will go to paying Obama's deficit in his budget. 10 cents of every dollar. $2 trillion. That's the amount the budget will raise taxes on businesses and so-called upper-income families over the next 10 years. Because he has the Bush-era tax rates expiring for incomes of $200,000 and up. And I'm not done. He's got new spending here. Railway system. A national infrastructure bank. I thought we had that shovel-ready crap already. Oh, but don't worry, he freezes discretionary spending. What does that mean? It means nothing, because he already has that $1 trillion from the stimulus built in. So he's freezing the stimulus money within the discretionary spending. He's not cutting a damn thing. That's the point. Oh, a little program here and there, but he makes up for it elsewhere. Kenny, Dallas, Texas, the great WBAP. Go.
Thanks for taking my call. First, I want to say I'm a big fan, and I'm a conservative also, but you're dead wrong on the separation of church and state and faith in general.
First of all, I didn't say a word about the separation of church and state. What would you like to know about it?
Well, let me tell you something about it. James Madison wrote in a memorial and remonstrance against religious assessments that religion is wholly exempt from the cognizance of the institution of civil society. And there's a very
let me tell you about James Madison, since you're going to pull a quote to prove one thing and I'll pull a quote to prove another. James Madison was educated at what is now Princeton University. He was educated by, I guess today we'd call them Presbyterians. He was a believer in God. He didn't have a particular orthodoxy. And yet, when it comes to the Founding Fathers, as crucial as he was, he's one of the hardest to peg. So when you come out of the box like you do, let me tell you about James Madison, and then you quote one little quote from him. Anybody else can go to James Madison, Google quotes on religion. You'll see my point. I can give you a quote that says exactly the opposite. So you're picking a man who is we are the least able to discern exactly what he thought about religion, even though we know he was a believer.
If we go back to Elena Kagan's comments,
this guy's down. You know what? You didn't even answer what I just said.
Well, you told me.
Why are you throwing Elena Kagan in here? What the hell does she have to do with anything?
May I say? She said, I don't think that the court should strike down laws that they think are senseless just because they're senseless. Now, you yourself have said that liberalism is a religion. So if you, in fact, separated faith from law...
All right, pal. Thanks for your call. All right, the guy is really annoying. We go from Madison to Kagan to myself said liberalism is a religion. So what he's trying to say is, I should hold up liberalism and treat it like a religion. And then he claims he's a conservative. We'll be right back. I don't know what I said that's so offensive. Read the Declaration of Independence. I mean, that's our most prominent statement, the collective wisdom of the time of the founders. Nothing in there about separation of church and state. Nothing in the Constitution about separation of church and state. And in fact, because of the Declaration and the Constitution, and because of the way they are written, we are in fact the most tolerant society on the face of the earth of people of different religions and people of no religion. So I don't understand this hostility. We should be extremely happy, those of us who are not Christians, that we were born into this society. This country was founded by Christians. I know this offends some of you out there, but it's true. They did not seek to impose their religion on the rest of us, that is, for the future. But there's no question that it influenced the founding, as did the Scottish Enlightenment, as did John Locke, and so forth. This is truth. These are facts. Don't run away from them. Embrace them. It's true. And we are the most tolerant society on the face of the earth because we have a Declaration of Independence that declares that our rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are unalienable. They're God-given. And because the Constitution provides for the free exercise of religion and rejects the establishment of a theocracy, which was the point of the First Amendment. Not to secularize the society in every regard, but not to establish a theocracy. That is why you live in liberty. Get it? That's a good thing, not a bad thing. For those of you who call me and claim, Mark, I'm a big fan of yours, I'm a conservative, but, and then they trash the founding and they trash religion. Then you're not a big fan of mine, and you should listen to somebody else. We'll be right back. No, I don't want to discuss religion all day, so we won't. And also, Paul Ryan, the chairman of the House Budget Committee, we're going to have him on this hour. He'll help walk us through this disaster that is Obama's budget, and it is a disaster. The spending is massive. Here we are at the precipice, right? Do you know, there it is on the Drudge Report, our debt now equals the entire economy? And by the way, this is the on-budget debt, not the unfunded liabilities, which is over $100 trillion. Over $100 trillion. The debt now equals the entire economy. In other words, the debt is over $15 trillion. Our economy produces, on a good year, $14 to $15 trillion. You got that? 5 trillion of those dollars. 5 trillion. Created by Obama and the Democrats. It is just mind-boggling.